All right. Well, good morning, everyone. This is Jennifer Dean. I'm with the New York Natural Heritage Program and the iMapInvasives project. And so we're tasked by the state to manage and provide data tools to all the state partners and volunteers and so forth who are dealing with invasive species or, want to somehow participate in the invasive species efforts that are going on. We're really lucky here in New York State to have resources to, to help in this this effort. The prisms, of course, like SLELO, there's a lot of boots on the ground, really being strategic about invasive species and reporting them and strategic about treatments and so forth. And so in order to, be strategic, we have this big information database, iMapInvasives, and to, provide a way for people to input information and also provide information back out. Because, 10 years ago, before this whole system was up and running, every agency or organization just had their own file cabinet full of paper data forms about where things are on their particular properties and what they were doing, and so everyone was kind of working in a silo. And thanks to, current mapping technologies and web-based mapping systems, we're able to share that information a lot more easily. All right, and so I'm going to start out with just a few slides, but most of this presentation will be on the actual website itself. And so hopefully you can see my PowerPoint presentation at this point. Just want to go over some of the topics for today. And so this is kind of the advanced topics for SLELO partners and friends of SLELO. I know that there's it was advertised widely, which is great. So anyone who is on today can learn more about the features within IMAP. But I'm kind of assuming that everyone already has an account and has been into IMAP at one point or another. If you haven't really had the basics of IMAP before, then please visit our website. Oh, I should have put that on this first slide, but it's iMapInvasives.org. At some point you can, after this webinar, you can look at our recorded trainings that we have on there. We have a lot of the basics recorded, and so you can go through there and kind of catch back up to some of the things that we're talking about today. But we are going to be jumping into more of the advanced data, so how to document treatment and your effort over time. We're going to talk about filtering data and exporting data, how to manage projects within IMAP, and then I'll mention a little bit about bulk uploads and the Certified Trainers Network as well. And then probably as many of you know, we launched a brand new interface last spring, so April 2019. The entire iMapInvasives system migrated to a new platform that was programmed by NatureServe, who's a nonprofit organization that manages the information for the natural heritage programs across the continent. And so this was a really exciting change because 10 years of internet technology had changed drastically, right? And so many of our mapping technologies needed to be updated. A lot more mobile tools are out there in the field. We needed to update to that as well. And so with iMapInvasives 3.0, is what we've been calling it, we have now the ability to really leverage these more current mobile mapping technologies and web-based mapping technologies, which is great. This is a work in progress, so there's more features still coming. Things are just now trickling out as well. Actually, we just got an update last week that has yet to be announced, so you guys are kind of getting the first tour of some of the new features that we have that came out. And so one thing to keep in mind every once in a while when we do have updates, so if you see something kind of strange going on, one of the first things that that's always good to do with any kind of like web-based platform is to clear your cache. Anytime especially if you see an email for a new update has been pushed out to the website. And so for most browsers, using Control-Shift-Delete will help you clear the cache of your browser. It's, a lot of like things get kind of stuck in your browser in a sense. Browsers try to optimize the speed, and so they try to remember certain things that you do on each website. And so by clearing that cache, it allows the new programming to work correctly. And just also a reminder that iMapInvasives works best in browsers that are not Internet Explorer. Internet Explorer is getting better, but it's still, there are some strange things every once in a while that don't work quite as well as Google Chrome and Safari and Firefox and so forth. Great. And so before I jump into talking about treatments and exporting data and things like that, I did want to give you a little overview of the data structure and the user permissions within IMAP, because that'll kind of set the stage for some of the conversations that we'll have here. And so this slide just shows some of the basics of what are the data types within IMAP. And so the terminology is always important to understand as you're getting into there and getting into the more advanced data. And so the presence point or the presence records are the kind of the simple concept of I saw this invasive species here at this point in time. And so now with the new IMAP system, this can be a point line or polygon, and you can actually have multiple species tied to one presence record. So if you're standing at one point, you can enter multiple species at once. Not detected is a way to indicate that you searched for something that did not find it. And so this is really powerful. It's that absence data, and we have that available for all species. And then treatment is what did you treat and the details associated with that. So whether you did a mechanical, chemical, or biological treatment, you can put in a lot of detail and so forth and indicate that area that you treated. And then each of those three record types are tied together with something that we call a searched area. And so the searched area record is created on the back end anytime you create one of those, the presence not detected or treatment records. So in many cases, you might not even know that it's being created. And if you're just using the mobile app to input points, you really never even have to think about the searched area records. But once you start getting into more advanced data recording, like with treatments and not detected and so forth, and doing a lot of work at one site at one time, then the searched area can really help improve the efficiency of your workflow, because it's tying together a lot of data fields that are available about, say, habitat and like number of hours worked and things like that for all these different record types out in one fair swoop. So we'll see a little bit more about that once we get into the live system. And then another kind of complex thing to walk through, in just the simple terms is what are the user roles and permissions within IMAP? Because this will be important in, whether or not you actually have treatment access or you can download treatments, say, from your organization and so forth. So in the most simplest of terms, kind of starting with that pink box down in the lower right-hand corner, anyone who signs up for an IMAP account is an IMAP member, is a member of IMAP. You can be in any state in Canada or the United States. You can input data anywhere. You can look at all the publicly accessible data, so the confirmed non-confidential records. There's a lot of power that you have by just signing up for a free iMapInvasives account, no matter where you are. And then you start getting more permissions once you're affiliated with an organization within your jurisdiction. So here in New York State, organizations can run the gamut from state agencies like New York State DOT to nonprofits like Audubon or lake associations. Organizations can be Cornell Cooperative Extension for certain counties. We have the flexibility to kind of slice and dice those organizations into different groups. And then, kind of moving up that chart, the jurisdiction, like here everyone is in New York as their jurisdiction. We couldn't call it just state, because we also have Canadian provinces that are using iMapInvasives. So just keep in mind that when you're looking in IMAP, if you ever see the word jurisdiction, that means your state, and for you it's New York. And for New York, we, at the Natural Heritage Program, we're the managing organization for New York. And then further on, the entire system for all states and provinces is managed by NatureServe. But really, for your purposes, we want to focus on those first two boxes. So as I mentioned, the IMAP member they can view, enter data, export data, and they can view, but they cannot enter treatment records. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And they can create personal projects, and we're going to get into that here later on in this webinar. And then once you become affiliated with an organization, through iMapInvasives, so you have to make sure it's tagged within your user account, and I will show you how to do that. Then you get the ability to enter treatment records. And so, that's one thing to keep in mind as we go through this. And, we've been learning a lot as we made the transition to IMAP 3, and we're realizing that a lot of the new members that have signed on since we transitioned have not necessarily gotten their organization tagged to their account. And so that's one thing we're trying to work through and make sure everyone is in the right spot, in a sense. But I'll show you how to check your account and make sure that you're in the right organization. And one thing to keep in mind, even if you're unaffiliated, so say if you're a volunteer and and you do need treatment access, then you can contact us, and we actually have kind of an organization that we created that's a no affiliation organization that we can put you in as a volunteer, so that you can still enter treatments if your projects are needing that. And for those of you who are using iMapInvasives for their work, and they're part of an organization, it's good to keep in mind that there are different roles that we can assign to you. You can be an admin for your organization within IMAP, and or you can be a member, and there are different roles with that. We actually have an online recorded webinar on our website under the online tutorial section, and it's called Power Users, and so we have all that information really detailed out about how, as an organizational leader, you can manage your organization. And within an organization, you can also create organizational projects, and those also can have different roles as well. So it can get, you can see it can get complex really quickly, but we structured it very carefully in this way so that we could put a lot of power of the data management in the hands of the people who need to manage it, essentially. And so, so that yellow pop-up box there is just a reminder to make sure your organization is up to date in your IMAP profile, and we will take a look at that here in just a moment. But just one last slide, a quick rundown of projects versus organizations, because if you've been an IMAP member for a long time, for many years, projects meant a very different thing in the old IMAP. And so what I've been telling people now is just forget everything you learned about projects from before, because it did change drastically, and here's how we're seeing projects and organizations now in IMAP. So now projects are, I guess as before as well, they're a way to tag any record to any type of topic or grant or event. You can actually, each record can be tagged to as many projects as you want to. As a project leader, you can actually go to somebody else's record and just tag it to your project. So if you want to kind of organize records in your area, you can do that. So it makes it easier to filter, it makes it easier to export, because you can filter and export based on a project. And projects can be affiliated either with your organization, or they can be deemed a personal project. And so you can do that either way, and either way you can add members to your project and so forth, and we'll go into that in more detail as well. But the big difference between now and the old IMAP is there are no record editing or confirming powers that are doled out with project. That's a change from the past. Before, if you were a confirmer, you would confirm records through projects, but that is no longer the case. There's no editing powers given with projects. And organizations now are the key to the specific permissions within IMAP. And so, as I mentioned before, organization members, regardless of what organization is, can enter treatments, and they can see they can see the treatment details from their own organization, but not from other organizations. And the administrators of those organizations can edit and confirm the organization records. So that's a huge thing as well, huge difference from before. And they can set up organizational projects. Anybody within your organization can set up an organizational project. So those are kind of the two main things to, or two things to keep in mind as we go through, that now everything's really tied to organization, but projects still remain a great way to basically tag and help you filter through records. All right. Okay, I'm going to go ahead now and switch over to the IMAP website. Here we go. So hopefully everyone can see that. All right. And so I am now logged in to iMapInvasives. And if you've logged in recently, you've probably seen this familiar scene. You kind of get these little hexagons or circles all around the North America, and you can quickly see which states and provinces have been using IMAP for quite a bit of time. One of the first things we're going to do, though, before we start diving into the map, is on this upper left-hand corner, there is a little icon with a leaf behind it and a little insect on it. That icon has the menu for a lot of different things that we're going to look at later, but we're going to go to your account. And so I just want to make sure that you know how to look at your information and make sure that you're in the right organizations and projects. So here's my account, one of my accounts, because I have to have multiples because I'm always testing things in the system. So this is my organizational member account as opposed to my administrator account. But you can see that as I scroll down, I have different projects that I'm listed under. I have one organization that I'm actually an admin for, and then I'll just kind of ignore the jurisdictional privilege of me testing something out. But if you're doing a lot of invasive species work at the state level in New York State, then we may be giving you extra New York State IMAP privileges, and you can always ask us about that if you need to. A couple things to look at just to make sure your home jurisdiction is New York, if that's where most of your data entry is taking place, and that your primary organization is filled out. If you need to, make sure that records are properly accredited to your organization as you're entering data. So that's really, really key. If I didn't have this filled out, or if I had, say, an older organization there, I would go and hit edit. You'll see that that drop-down is actually limited just to the project the organization that I'm a member of. So what I would need to do is go down to the organization box down here and then request to join a new organization. So say if I switch jobs and say I need to join the the Buffalo Olmsted Parks Conservancy, I can select that, and then I can hit request to join that organization. And then the admin for that organization will get an email and say, Jennifer Dean has requested to join your organization, and then they can choose to add me to their organization or not. You do have to remember to hit the save button after you do that, so that request gets sent. So I'm not going to do that right now. But then once you're accepted, then you'll see more that additional organization in your drop-down list. All right. And so by having that primary organization, that's what the data that you're entering will always default to that organization. You can always change it or exit out. Like if you're entering, say, some observations while you're on vacation and you don't really want it tied to your work account, for every observation that you add in, you can remove that organization affiliation. All right.
Jennifer, this is Megan.
Yeah.
While you're talking about projects and everything, so for like my point of view, I'll host like walk and talks, for example, and show people how to use like the mobile app. And I'm always wanting to add the folks to like certain projects prior to the workshops, and then when we go over that part, like they can see the project in there. What's the best approach for adding folks? You know, like when they're new users, they've just signed on, they've created an account. Can I add them myself, like from the back end before like a talk or something?
Yeah, so as the project admin, you can add them, and actually I'll go through that when I get to the project section. So you'll be able to do that ahead of time as the project admin, and then an individual user can request to join a project, just like I showed you how to request to join an organization. So there is that. So if the user knew ahead of time that they wanted to join your project, they could do it from their end as well. So you can do it either way. But I'll show you how to do it as a project leader here in a little bit.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, and definitely, actually, at each kind of little section, I'll pause for a moment and see if anybody has any questions about that particular topic that I just covered, because I know by the end we will have covered a whole bunch of different things. So at this point, does anybody else have any questions about your own user account and how to make sure you're in the right project or organization? All right. And one thing that I did want to mention too, if you have, you can see like I have pending here in this project, and that would also be the same in the organization. Like after I request to join something, it will say pending until the admin gets in there and changes me to a member. But if you keep seeing pending and the admin is not contacting you, feel free to send us an email at the iMapInvasives box at imapinvasives@dec.ny.gov, and I'll put that email address up at the end. Because sometimes those alerts will get caught in somebody's spam folder, and it's very possible that the project admin or the organizational admin did not see your request come through and don't know to go in there and activate you. So always, you know, if you're always like, or if you just need it like really quickly, you can always contact us and we can help you out. All right. So now I'm going to go back to that little menu icon and go back to the map, because now we're going to jump into the topic of treatments and how to record treatments and your effort over time. So just a quick orientation with the map itself, or the map page. So over on the left-hand side, we have all these navigating tools, you know, the zoom in and out, go back to the default view, which is what you're currently seeing. Go to your location, which if you have your location services enabled on your browser, it will get you pretty close. If you're on a cell phone, then it will get you much closer because you have an actual GPS. But when you're on a landline, you know, tied into the wireless, even sometimes it can be off by a mile or two, depending on where your internet provider is coming from. But you can search by your address, of course, or coordinates, or, you know, a town name, anything you would put into like a Google Maps search box, and that will get you there. So yeah, those navigating tools along the left, and then along the top here, we have all these action tools, and we're going to be going into those in more detail here in a little bit. And then along the right-hand side, we have map layers, so you can change your different base maps. You can turn off and on different types of data, different boundaries, like the PRISM boundaries or county boundaries and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of different ways you can customize the map. All right, and these hexagons are showing the aggregated presence data. So, you know, for all species, because I don't have any kind of filter on right now, but you can always turn that off and on. So say if I turn off all that present species data, of course the map goes blank. I can turn on the treatments at this point, since that's what we're focusing on. You can see the treatments within New York State. You can zoom in, you know, say if I want to zoom into the SLELO area, you can see that there's a lot of treatment work that's been going on over the years in SLELO, because they've been doing a lot of great work out there. So say if I wanted to identify what all these treatments are right in this area, I can go to this tool, this action tool called Identify Measure. And what pops up is this area boundary box. So I click area, and now I can click on the map. So if I wanted to say, identify these records in the Selkirk Shores State Park, I can draw a little box around there, say, see what's here, and then that will produce a table of the treatments that are in that area. So we'll just give that a moment to spin. Here we go. And so what pops up first is actually a table with all these different tabs of different types of data. So you can see the present species, the unconfirmed species, not detected. There's this little toggle up here it defaults to include the hidden layers, so the layers that were not turned on. So if I just only want to see the layers that I intentionally turned on, oh, right, because I have the unconfirmed species and the treatments. So if I just want to really focus on the treatments, I can go to that tab, and I can see, let's see, it says underneath my, the shape that I drew, where they had 11 treatments there. Oops. You can see 11 results down at the bottom. I had forgotten to turn off the unconfirmed presence records, so you're seeing a lot of those pink dots all around, so that's actually here I can close this for a second. I might be able to turn those off now. There we go. So now we're seeing only the treatments. So if I go back to that see what's here, it should only give me treatments for that area that I've delineated with my polygon. All right, there we go. And so I'm going to get my screen a little bigger because I'm on a small laptop giving this webinar here, so we can see a little bit. So what you can do is there are these tasks right there. I can flash whatever treatment is highlighted right now, or say I want to look at this treatment, I can flash that one. So as I click on these different treatments, you can see that they're, after some flashing, it's turning blue, or I can make it flash red. So there's a lot of treatments that are going on in that state park. I can look at the details. So say I want to go to the details of this one. So this is a water chestnut treatment. You can see they had a very detailed polygon that they delineated for this treatment. They have treatment type is physical, so it was some type of mechanical removal. And so there's a lot of great information that you can get off there. Hold on a sec. All right, and then so if I go back to the map, so you'll notice that a lot of times there's different tabs that open up in iMap. So when I clicked on the details for that treatment, a new tab opened up. But I can, let's say, go to this next one down. This is a treatment for stilt cracks. And so you can see that that was also a physical treatment. And there's a lot of information that you can get out of these. All right. So going back to the map, now I want to show you, now that we have an idea of how to find these different treatments and so forth, and how to identify them and get the details, I'll show you actually how to enter a treatment. So you do need to close like these boxes so that you have so that you can do the next action tool, which is create record. So if I go to the create record button, you can see it pops up an option to select presence or create a presence record, a treatment record, a not detected, or a multi-record searched area. And so that multi-record is going to allow you to do all these different record types at one site at one point in time. So if you went out in the field and say you did a survey and you did a treatment and you found some things but didn't find some other things, you can add that all together in one fair swoop. But I'm going to focus on, just to keep it simple first, the treatment record type. so let's see here. The first thing it's going to ask you about is, what you're treating. So let's say I'm doing multiflora rose. And you can actually add multiple species if you want. If you were treating multiple species, you can add as many as you need to. So I'm going to hit next, and actually, I'm going to go ahead and turn on the unconfirmed and the confirmed data so that we can actually see where the presence points are for different things. Sorry, and I'm clicking erroneously on the map here. I'm going to go back. Okay. Let's see here. Let me give this a second to spin. Actually, I'm just going to start this over. Okay. So I'm going to do a multiflora rose treatment. And let's say, here, if I hit next, then it tells me, or gives me an option of a point, a polygon, or a line. So I'm going to do a polygon, and it says draw the area vertices on the map, and then double-click to complete. So let's say I wanted to do a treatment right here. And the first thing I'm going to learn is that I need to have a presence record already there, because in the database's point of view, you can't treat something that doesn't already exist. So I do need to make sure that my treatment record is on an existing presence record, or if I'm doing it all at once, then I could use that multi-record tool that I showed you before. So I'm going to go ahead and redraw my polygon. And actually, I just happen to know that some of these observation points right here are multiflora rose, and let's say I treated those, so I'm going to draw my polygon around this little patch here. And I could have filtered as well beforehand to just say have multiflora rose showing up on the data that's there. Okay, and so now it's telling me that my polygon I drew is over top of 9 previous records for multiflora rose for that particular species. And of course, if I would have picked multiple species, it would be analyzing it for all those species. So you can see those presence records were all made in 2017. I'm going to go ahead and hit next. And now I'm going to have all those more detailed questions about my treatment. And so it does have a begin date that it defaults to today, but you can go through the calendar if you need to. If the end date is different than your begin date, you can change that. Let's say this is my initial treatment. It is defaulting to me as the lead contact for that treatment, but you can change that as well. My organization is defaulted to my treatment goals. So let's say we're trying to suppress this multiflora rose there. I can add in any comments or rare species, precautions, permits. There's a lot of not required information that I can choose to add in if I want to. I can add photos. I can tag this to a project, so I'll go ahead and do that. And then if I want to add any local contact information, I can at this point. So those are like the basic treatment record fields. And now I get into more detail when I go to the treatment type. So I could do, say, a physical treatment, say I'm going in there and pulling things out, or perhaps this is a chemical treatment, in which case it has a lot of detailed questions about who's applying the treatment, what type of application is this, what are the chemicals used, what's the quantity used. There's a lot of information, actually the same information that pesticide applicators will need to record to be able to report to DEC at the end of the year when they do their pesticide applicator reports. And you can add additional chemicals to that issue if you want to. And so now I have my little summary here, so I can scroll through that and make sure all my information is correct. I'm going to hit complete. And so now I've completed a treatment for these multiflora rose presence records. It created a searched area for me, but it also created the treatment record. And so I'm going to go ahead and click on that treatment record. And you can see the information that I entered, so It did the automatic analysis of what observations were already under that polygon for that particular species in the past. And so you can see those. You can see the, the information I added, the different chemical information. I only put down one thing, but you could put down a lot of detailed information if you needed to. And I can also go to that searched area page, so I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Because remember, this is that record that's tied to every record type. So it's automatically tied to that treatment record, but it just gives me more information that I can populate if I want to. If I wanted to change my organization, I could do that here. If I go down to this edit details, you can see that there's a lot more data fields that you can populate if you need to. So, things about your sampling details, the weather, if that was important for your particular project, number of hours worked by your crew or your volunteers. So I know that's an important metric for a lot of projects. So there's a lot of information that you can fill in at this point in time. I'm going to go ahead and cancel that. Another key thing to keep in mind is that you can delete it at this point as well. So I actually am going to hit delete because this is a test record. It's going to ask you why you deleted it. And hit yes. And so I can do this one of two ways. I can either delete it from the searched area or from the treatment, and it will cascade to both records. All right, so now if I go back to the map, close this out, and I kind of nudge it to refresh the map, my treatment polygon just disappeared because now it's deleted and it's gone from the map. All right. And so I won't go through the whole process here, but just to remind you that you do have that option to do the multi-record searched area. So say if I wanted to draw a polygon on the map for that area, I could do that. And then now I could add more observations and more presence records. So if I wanted to add more species, or if this is the first recording of that species, say if I found a new invasive plant and I just yanked it out right then and there, but I still want to document that it was at one point here and I treated it, I could go ahead and do all that information at this point. All right. So that's how you enter a treatment and how you, you see the treatment details. So I wanted to pause for a sec and see if anybody had any questions about treatment records. All right. And yeah, feel free to, put questions in the chat box as well if you think of them along the way, and we'll have more time for questions at the end. And just like with the old IMAP as well, one of the best ways to really get this information kind of cemented into your brain is just to go into the interface and try it out. And now that we have the ability for you to delete your own records, it makes it easier to kind of play around with it. I just plea with you to please remember to delete your records if it is a test record, so that it's not erroneous data just kind of lingering in the database. All right, great. And I guess one other thing that I'll mention is that if you're doing a lot of detailed data collection in the field, say this field summer or field season, you're going to have a big crew of people out there helping, or maybe you are planning on just being in the field and collecting a lot of polygon data, and I'll mention this again later, but we do have some advanced IMAP apps that you can use for your organization. It goes above and beyond the simple iMap mobile app that allows you to collect points outside and while you're in the field. The advanced mobile apps allow you to collect the polygon data and the really detailed fields for all the record types. So that includes treatments and, really detailed polygons. And actually, a lot of the state parks work that you're seeing here, a lot of this information was collected with the iMap Advanced app that we're calling it, in the Esri Collector app. And if you're interested at all in using those for this summer, because you're going to be collecting a lot of detailed data, then please contact us and we'll get you hooked up with the information you need to download that app and get up and running with it.
Jennifer, is there a webinar coming up covering that?
You know what, we haven't scheduled it yet, but I think our plan is for March. We're testing out a monthly webinar series for the IMAP team, and so this month is the web map services, next month is confirming data, and then for March we're planning on doing one on these advanced field tools, and it would probably be the 1 o'clock slot after the PRISM call. You know, there's that monthly PRISM call with the last Wednesday of every month, and so it probably, I don't know what that date is off the top of my head, but it would be that last Wednesday of March at 1 p.m. But we'll get that scheduled and send out a announcement to all the PRISM listservs. Great. All right. So another big topic that folks wanted to cover is how to filter information on IMAP, because you know, if I zoom out, it starts getting very cluttered very fast because we have over 200,000 observations, you know, and I don't know, thousands of treatments, thousands of not detected records, and you can make the map very busy very quickly. And so one of the things that we really wanted in IMAP 3 was a good way to filter records. So I'm going to, before I click on this filter records action tool, I did want to point out there's this find record. I feel like it's a little confusing with the terminology. The find record is just if you have a record ID number and you, like say if somebody has sent you, you know, to look at, say, treatment number 589, I don't even know if that exists, but you could type that in, you could hit find, and it would clear the map except for that treatment ID number. But where the real power is, I feel like, is in this filter records area. And so you have this, you have a lot of power within this tool. We have, one of the first things is to filter on your own records. So you can actually toggle off and on the filter on your records and then hit apply filter. And let's see, this is actually one of my test accounts, so I don't know if I'm actually going to have any records with this account because it's not my admin account. But if you did have a lot of records on there, that's how you'd be able to filter on just yours. I promise I am contributing data, even though it doesn't look like it. It's just not through this test account. All right, you can also filter by observer if you're, say, looking for one of your staff members or volunteers, by species name. One thing to note with species name is that the default is to all the network species. And so the way that IMAP is set up, you know, we have a master list of invasive species for the whole continent. And, you know, of course, there's sometimes discrepancies between taxonomists on what one species should be called. And so names keep changing. Knotweed has been called a million different things in the scientific world. But we had to choose one taxonomic standard for the whole international list. But then within New York, because we're a member jurisdiction of the IMAP network, we've been able to define our own species list. So if you do toggle to the New York species, you'll see more familiar you know, names. So like if I put in knotweed, you'll see that the genus that we're using there is Renutria. Whereas if I go back to the network and I type in knotweed, you'll see that it's still on Falloppia. And so just keep that in mind if you're not seeing the species name that you're expecting. Maybe just toggle it over to the New York species name. But of course, you can also select habitat type. So say if you just want the aquatic information, let's see. Give this a moment to spin here. I think we have a lot of aquatic information, a lot of aquatic data. So if I maybe if I zoom into a more terrestrial area, turn off some of these to speed it up. You can see that there's a lot of areas terrestrial areas that don't have data filling them in. Let's see here, and you can, of course, do dates. You can search by organization, by project. It will default to all the projects in New York, but you can just toggle it to just your projects, which might make things a little simpler so that you can find them more easily. And so here, I'm going to do a practice filter here on water chestnut. So I can select that species, and I'm going to do some dates as well. So let's say I want to do some older data. Let's see, you can kind of run through the different years. So say I just want 2017 data. So I can do my begin date and my end date. So January 1st, 2017 to say December 31st, 2017. Or you might want to do this for like last year for your organization for your annual reporting. So I get that all set up and I apply my filter. And let's see here. And so that should give us a lot more pared down map here. You can tell every time I zoom, it has to recalculate. So it's, but here's all the data from 2017 for water chestnut. So we have treatments and we have observations of water chestnut. But I'm going to zoom back into that Selkirk Shores area because I think there's a lot of interesting stuff going on with water chestnut that gives me an opportunity to show you an example of how you can like look at your particular project or organization efforts over the years. And one little trick that I'd learned, so this at least works in Google Chrome. I think Firefox might have a similar thing. If I'm on the tab for the map and I right-click on that tab header, I can duplicate that map that I just had. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this twice because what I want to do is I want to see this map over the course of a couple of different years. And so if I I just duplicated that tab, and so now I just want to bump this up to 2018 and apply filter. And while that's running, I'm going to go over to this other tab and do the same thing, but do it for 2019 and apply filter. And so what's going on here, let me get this all queued up, is starting with my far left-hand tab there, here I have the 2017 data for, I'll go ahead and just have the treatments and the observations going on. So you can see, actually, I'll just put the treatments in there. So I have the treatments queued up. You can see there's a lot of effort going on. There's actually multiple treatments for water chestnut for 2017. So a lot of work was put into that water chestnut control. If I go over to the next tab, which was 2018, and I'm just only going to show the treatments. I'm going to toggle off those other ones. It looks very similar to 2017, but so a lot of effort once again gone into that. And then when I go over to the third tab, which is 2019, and I'll pare it down now to just the treatments, you can see that the treatment effort was a lot less in that year. Of course, you need a lot more information to put that into context. Hopefully I can look at the distribution of those species by turning on the present species. It would be very helpful if they had not detected records. So if this, maybe their treatments over the 2017 and 18 if it did actually reduce the water chestnut, then you would hope to see a not detected record showing where that water chestnut was not found. And so that would be a great way to be able to show change over time in that population. So that's just one very, very detailed scenario of where you could use the filters to be able to show that change over time. So, bouncing from, you're going back to 2017, 2018, and then down to 2019, and showing that reduction, at least of the treatment effort. And hopefully that, you know, getting that data in there to show the reduction of the actual population as well. All right. So that's a lot of information there on the filtered records that you know, as you can see, there's a ton of different ways you can kind of play around with this and get the map set up the way that you like it. But I'll pause for a second. Any questions about that filtering capability? All right. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and clear this filter out. And let's say we just want to do water chestnut. And, you know, I'm clearing out the year filter that I had on there. So I'm going to apply that filter. And so we'll get back to, you know, just having water chestnut. I'm going to go ahead and just leave it on the present species and zoom out a little bit. So you can see that, you know, there's quite a bit of water chestnut in the area that people have been working on and documenting. So say I want to export this data. And by exporting the data, you can have, you know, I guess a lot more flexibility in like different analyses you can run. If you have a particular report that you need to produce, say for your supervisors at the end of the year, exporting the data might be what you need to do. You know, of course, you can always take screenshots of the information that you have queued up, but sometimes you just need to export the information to be able to really put it in just the right format that you need for your reporting purposes. So there is this export tool, and this is actually one of the new features that just got released last week, is more flexibility in this export tool. So what you have here is you have different options on how you want to export the data. If you have ArcGIS, then the geodatabase and the shapefile will allow you to open it up in ArcGIS. And then the CSV file, you can also open up in mapping programs, but you can also open that just in Excel. So it'll come out as a comma-separated value spreadsheet. And so let's say I want to just export, and that information, I can choose to whether I want to ignore the filter. And if I click that, it won't be filtered just to water chestnut. But say I just want the water chestnut. I want to use the current map extent. So what that means is what I see on my screen is what's going to be exported back out. If I move my screen over a little bit here, and I can hide this, then now I'm getting into this area if I had data over there. So whatever's in my map extent that I can see in my web browser, that's what it's going to export. So I'm going to go ahead and hit export, hit OK, and it's now currently generating one file, and I have success. I'm going to download that file. And every browser is set up a little differently, but here in Google Chrome, it shows the download down along the bottom. I think in Firefox, it shows the downloads kind of up at the top. So if I hit that export, I'm going to see a zip file, and I'm going to have, it's going to give me two files, one for the polygons and one for the points. So that's good information to have. So say if I open up this point one, it wants to open it up in Excel. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And it's basically just going to give me a spreadsheet of all the water chestnut points that were right there. For the polygons, it still gives me an XY coordinate, but it's the centroid of those polygons. So it'll be a very similar spreadsheet. All right. But the new things that have come out are really cool. If I decide that I want more customization than just the boundary, I can toggle this boundary thing, and now I can say I want to use a custom boundary. And so I click on this define or select a boundary area. So here at this point, I can draw vertices on the map. So say if I want this little group of, that's all I want to export, I can get this little group and I can hit next. I could have put a buffer on that as well, and I can hit export records, and it'll give me the same type of zip file. But say I don't want to do that, I want to, so that's one way to do it. I want to show you another way. If I want another custom boundary, so define or select it, This other option to use the existing geography gives you options of things like county, PRISM. PRISM are these regional management partnerships down here, hydro basin, water body. So let's say if I want all the water chestnut from SLELO, so I'm going to hit that regional management. So what happens now here, if I zoom out, it has now turned on the PRISM boundaries. And what I need to do is actually click on the PRISM. So it says click on the map to select a regional management partnership. And if I click on SLELO, then, sorry, the map has to reload here. You can now see that SLELO is highlighted, and it knows that that's what I want. I can actually add a buffer to this. So say if I want to do 3 miles of a buffer. This does use a lot of bandwidth on your computer, so wait until you're in good connectivity to do this kind of thing. You can hit accept. So that actually just drew a 3-mile buffer around the SLELO PRISM. I can hit next and then hit export records. And so it's going to spin for a moment so that I get my file, and now I get a new zip file that I can open up. And it's going to look very similar. There is this little kind of a README file that exports statuses. So if I click on that, I can open it, and basically it just tells me a little bit more detail about what I just downloaded. All right. Whoops. Need to go back to the map. Forget which tab I was on. All right. So that gives you, by having this boundary area, it really gives you a lot of, flexibility in what you're exporting. One thing to keep in mind is that there is a 10,000 record limit on your exports. So say if I wanted to ignore the filter and I wanted to, actually here, I'm just going to, I'm doing this blindly, so I haven't actually tested this since the update, but say if I wanted to export all the records from New York State, so state province, I'm going to click on New York, so it's highlighted, and then I'm going to hit next. It should give me an error message. And if it doesn't, then it will soon, because it should tell me that I'm hitting over a 10,000 record limit. If you ever, I'm just going to go ahead and X out of that. If you ever need more than that, you can try, of course, limiting your search results. You could filter this by species, and it should get you under 10,000. Or you can always contact us. If you have a big, say, research project that you're working on and you need a lot of data, you can make a custom data request through us like you've been able to in the past. All right. Any questions about that export tool? No, there's a lot in there to go through. All right. So the next thing I want to cover is how to manage projects. And we actually do have a lot more detail on how to manage projects on our webinar that we have recorded here. Actually, if I go over to, I'm going to go to our nyiMapInvasives.org website. And if you click on training, there's this online tutorials option there. And if you scroll down, then you have these different recorded webinars that we have. And I went into a lot of detail. Oh, where is it? The Beyond the Data. So this is, kind of the power users webinar, and it really gets into the nitty-gritty details of how to manage an organization and how to manage a project. But I'm just going to go ahead and give you a quick overview today. So if I go over, I'm going to clean up some of these tabs just to improve my performance here. I go back to this menu icon, and you see all these different options. I'm going to go ahead and click on Projects. All right, and it defaults to New York State. You'll see that there's almost 500 projects listed for New York State. I can quickly toggle that to say just my projects. And so I have 4 different projects that this test account is a member of or pending. You can see that I'm still waiting to be accepted into my own project here. But you can also see your role as either an admin or a member for different projects. And you can also see if a project has been marked as inactive, which is something that we can do if, if a project is just completely done and you just don't want it to show up anymore in the options, we can deactivate those. All right. So here, if I untoggle that, you can also use the search box. So I can search for SLELO, and any project with the word SLELO in it will pop up, and it looks like there's 15 different projects. And as you can see, some of them are older projects, but some of them are, very active right now. And you can sort those by different things, so like the start date, the project lead, and so forth. But what I really want to show you is how to create a new project. So there's that option up there in the upper right-hand corner to create a new project. And so anyone can do this, whether you're a member of an organization or not. So I'm going to go ahead and create something like, with the project name, I'd like to include as much information as possible because, as you saw, there's 500 projects within the IMAP list for New York. So if you just say My Invasive Plants Project, it could get very confusing very quickly, especially if you want to invite other people to it and so forth. So let's say I'm doing something for Putnam County, and I just want a project for our summer field crew. So I try to make that title as comprehensive as possible so that it's obvious to the person, especially if you have multiple people you want to have in that project. That way they can distinguish it from other ones. All right. Oh, and I totally. All right. And then, of course, you can put a description in there. You can put in a start date. I do encourage everyone to put a start date because it helps with the big table of projects. And then you have this option to either associate it with your organization. And so if I do that, it'll give me the list of organizations that I'm a member of. Or I can toggle that off and just say, I want this to be a personal project. I can still invite people to this project, but say I just don't want to associate it with my work, I can toggle that off and on. All right. So here, I'll go ahead and make this an organizational project. I have one member. Let's say I want to add a member to this. So let's say I want to add Megan to my project. I can search her in the list and add her as a member. I can even make her an admin for my project if I want to. So I can, give more people powers within my project to add. Basically, the power for an admin is to add more members and to, change the description and things like that. All right, and so, and you can also add partner organizations. If I wanted to put SLELO in there, as a partner organization, there's not necessarily functionality tied to that, but it's a way to credit all the different partners that you're working with. And then, of course, you'll want to save that project so that it'll save all your changes and so forth and get it set up in the project list. All right, I'm going to go ahead and cancel that. Yes, I do want to, let's see. All right. Great, so I'll go ahead and toggle this back to one of my test projects that I'm an admin for. So Megan, just to kind of address your question that you had before, like how do you, and I showed you how to add members when you're first starting a project, but say you want to add them later on. So here I'm in my project screen, and there's this little button that says Edit up in the upper right-hand corner. And so when I hit that, now I have that same ability now to add more members. So if you're about ready to do a training and you have a list of participants ahead of time and you want to add them to your project, you can do that from this screen. They do have to have IMAP accounts, so make sure that everyone creates their own account before you try to add them to the project. All right. Any questions about projects? Megan, did that address your questions for your training purposes?
Yeah, I think that I ran into trouble when the rollout first came on, trying to start a project with somebody who didn't have their organization right. And also maybe they didn't actually make their account like I had thought they had done.
Yeah, so there was a lot of hiccups at the very beginning of the rollout.
Yeah, this makes perfect sense to me now.
Okay, great.
I'm not sure where I had trouble before. I think it was just, a new rollover and maybe misunderstanding with creating the account to begin with.
And one thing that we do continue to run into that we have to figure out a better way to address is when people, here, let me get to the, if I'm going to create an account for the first time. So if I go into this login page where you can either log in with your existing credentials or you can sign up. So if it's a brand new person and they're signing up, they've never had an IMAP account before, they fill in all this stuff and they hit join and it sends them an email verification. Just like if you're creating a new Facebook account or something, you have to now go to your email and click that link to verify that you're, and that actually activates your account. But if they never see that email, like if they just forget to check their email or if it goes into their spam folder, which we've found has happened, then they never actually get activated. So they might feel like they did create their account because they filled in this form, but they never actually took that final step to activate it. So, if you ever run into a user who's kind of stuck in that limbo land, just reach out to us because we do have some little tricks up our sleeves to get people out of that, kind of force their accounts to be active from the admin world. All right. So just a couple other things that I wanted to cover. We wanted to touch on bulk uploads. And so in the past, the bulk upload is kind of this arduous process. Anytime you're trying to get existing data sets that were collected in some other manner, some other purpose, into a format to match up with another database, there's always going to be a lot of data formatting work, right? You have to make sure that the field where you're listing all your species is actually called the same thing, like it says species name in both data sets, and that those species names actually match up, the species names that we're using or the species ID. So, that's just one example for hundreds of different data fields that we could possibly be bulk uploading from your existing data sets. So it's, and that process is still, I think that no matter what database you have, that's always going to be the case, that you're always needing to reformat those data fields to match the, the IMAP format that you need to get it uploaded into. So it does take a lot of work. We have found that if you have, say you have a spreadsheet that you found from, someone who did some summer field work and they have less than 100 records that are all just simple presence points. Like say, they collected data on water chestnut all around the shore here, and they have 75 points that they need uploaded. We have found that it's actually more efficient to just go ahead and add those points in manually, point by point, if there's less than 100 of them. And you can do that through the presence record tool that we have there, just because you don't have to go through that data reformatting process that can take a lot of time. But if you do have, a huge data set, you have more than 100 points, or you have lots of polygon data, in which case, it's just trickier to try to copy the shape of a polygon from an old data set to a new data set, then you can contact us and start that bulk importing process. So we'll work with you to, we'll give you a template so you can match your data fields to our data fields. You could give us shape files if you have all these different polygon shapes collected, say, with a Trimble unit or something from the past. And so we'll work with you. It does take a lot of time, and there is a huge backlog of data sets to be imported. So it's not going to be something that's instantaneous, but we'll put you into the queue and start working with you. And of course, the more data formatting you can do on your end to get it into the format that we need to get it into IMAP, the easier it gets, and the quicker it can be added to the database. And one thing that I did mention before is we do have these new apps now, these advanced mobile data apps. And so, planning ahead is really important. Like if you know that you're going to be on the field all summer with a big field crew and you're going to be collecting, say, a lot of polygon data, a lot of treatment data, contact us soon, so that we can get you into the queue for learning about the new IMAP mobile app, Advanced. So this is using Survey 123 and/or Collector, depending on what type of data that you're collecting. And then last but not least, one of the topics that we were going to cover was the Certified Trainers Network. And I was just going to give you, just really basic overview of that. We have, so the Certified Trainers Network was something created by Brittany, who's on the call today, as her master's project through SUNY ESF the last couple years. And it's a network of people trained to train others in iMapInvasives and how to use it. The focus has been on reporting simple data through the mobile app, because that's one of the easiest things for citizen scientists, volunteers, and so forth to catch or to pick up on, and it's an easy way to start reporting information. If you are interested in becoming a certified trainer, please contact us. So we have, here I'm going to go back to our website. We actually, under the training tab, we have a tab for the Certified Trainers Network. There is a lot of great information in there, but really, if you want to start, if you want to get on the list and, be on the, we do have webinars that will, every once in a while we'll do a webinar on how to become a certified trainer, so that'll take you through the beginning of it. Just send us an email. Here we have our iMapInvasives@dec.ny.gov. Put in the subject line, the Certified Trainers Network, and we'll get you connected with the network. And it's a great opportunity to interact with other IMAP users and trainers throughout the state, and it's a great thing to add to your resume as well, and so forth. There's a lot of benefits to being a certified trainer. All right, and one final thing I wanted to show you is the upcoming trainings on the calendar here. So we have a couple of different webinar trainings coming up. Of course, there's one today, but two more that we have that are statewide are the IMAP 3 Web Map Services webinar, and so John Marino will be doing that this Wednesday. And you can register for that as if you want to be able to pull the live IMAP data into your own applications. So say if you're using ArcGIS, or not, like maybe if you just have a website where you want to display a web map of the IMAP data, say for Water Chestnut, that you have that capability now with the new platform. And then I'll be giving one next month for confirming records in iMapInvasives. So if you've been curious about how to confirm records, or you're in an organization you need to start confirming some records, then that'd be a good one to listen in on. And as I mentioned, I hope we're planning on getting one in March about those advanced mobile data collecting tools. All right, so that's all I had in the queue to cover, and I know that was a lot, and I've talked a lot. You're probably tired of hearing my voice at this point, but if there's any, I'll open it up to questions at this point, or if you just have little things that you've run into. It doesn't even have to be within the topics that we covered today, but if you have other questions, feel free to ask them now.
If anybody's trying to speak and they're on mute, or if you can't speak, feel free to use the chat box here.
Hey, this is Brittany. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, so I had a question about treatment records. This is a little bit more organizational, so I apologize for others on the line. When we're doing water chestnut polls, should we be creating treatment records for that information?
Yes, definitely. That's one of the things that I've been noticing in general is underreported in the state, is because I know that there's a ton of water chestnut polls going on, and especially for being able to show like the state level funders and policymakers that there is a lot of work going on. I think it's important to record those water chestnut polls. There has been talk about trying to do that in a more systematic way, like, what metrics specifically to record. I mean, essentially, the bare bones of it is, let's see if I can I'll bring up an example here. Like, so if I'm doing a water chestnut, and I'm very zoomed out. So say if I want to go over here and say I'm going to do a water chestnut poll where I know there's all that water chestnut data going on here. So let's say do water chestnut poll. I'm thinking about like the different metrics you could record in there. So if I get past, the basics of the treatment record, the poll is going to be a physical treatment type, right? So I'm going to hit physical. It's going to be a mechanical manual. You can put more information in there if you want to, if you have details about like how many bags were pulled or how many pounds of water chestnut. And then you have, of course, more information on, the treatment methods. So, this might be just a poll, or you might have had, say, if you had some type of harvester in there, you could put things there. And then how you disposed of it, I think, is important. So maybe you disposed of it, if you might have left it piled on site, or you might have taken it somewhere to get it composted. There's a lot of details that you can put in specifically for your water chestnut treatments. And I think, like, there is talk about, what's the best quantity, essentially, to record about water chestnut polls, whether it's like number of trash bags filled or number of pounds pulled out. But I think capturing that in the commons field right here would be key. So so that we can compare them state to state, or project to project. But then it would be great if we could be able to filter on that and just look at the water chestnut treatments that are out there. And I think it would show that there's a lot of work that's going on across the state for that particular species.
Great question. Thank you, Brittany. Does anybody else have any questions for Jennifer? Okay. All right. Well, then I guess we will close our webinar now. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for presenting on this topic today. And I'd like to thank each of you for attending. And the links for the recording will be available on the IMAP website